Okay, a very good evening to everyone. My name's Butch Fazal. This is the second of 3 webinars around diversity and inclusion. The first one being with Hope Powell around where's the next Black and Asian female coach. This one is where's the next Black or Asian manager in the professional game. And I'm really joined by an outstanding panel today, as well as an Arsenal legend and a co-host as well. My name's Butch Fazal. I'm Coach Inclusion and Diversity Manager. I'm also got a co-host with me, as well as answering some questions. Paul Davis. Paul, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Butch. Lovely to be here. I'm looking forward to this. So my title at the FA is a Senior Professional Coach Developer. Got that one out.
Well done, Paul. And also a legend as well, Chris Ramsey, Technical Director and Head of Coaching, and Anwar Uddin, Assistant Manager at Aldershot Town as well. So the aim of the webinar today is to unpick and explore why there is a significant lack of Black and Asian senior coaches and managers within the professional game. And I wanted to really start off with some context. If we think about the current picture, currently 4 Black managers working across 91 clubs in the English Premier League and the English Football League. That's 4.39% compared to a BAME playing population of 30%. That disparity is alarming. From the 2011 census, Asians in England and Wales make up 4.1 million of the population. Yet in that time, only 1 Asian manager or coach has ever worked at the most senior level in men's professional football. If the first stat was alarming, the second one is distressing. So the real question is, when are we going to really start moving the dial in this area of the game to become truly representative? I'm going to pass you over to Paul, first of all, to ask one of the key questions to Chris and Anwar. And Paul, after they both answer, I'm more than happy for you to also join in as well with the debate. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Butch. So, guys, I just want to start. So just drawing on your own lived experience, why do you think we're in this current situation within the game? Can I start with you, Chris, on that one?
Because I think there was a lot of initiatives put together maybe 20 odd years ago. I mean, you may remember when you were on your full badge. That was 1999, 2000. I was one of the tutors. And round about then, people started to talk about the lack of Black coaches or Asian coaches and the lack of diversity at top level. Generally, what happened was we put a lot of initiatives into place, which wasn't taken along by anybody, wasn't taken to the next level. And what it meant was that there was a cohort of players, who would be roughly between 55 and 60 now, who have actually missed their opportunity to be a coach, to be coaches in this country. Now, as we can see, there are people now speaking up about the lack of diversity in the football world. But unfortunately, the players who were playing at that time were misled with the fact that there was going to be initiatives put into place so that when they retired, they could become footballers. Now, had they been in a position, and I would say of allowing themselves to trust that the initiatives were going to be put into place, maybe we would have been further along our journey now, because the fuss would have been kicked up 20 years ago rather than being kicked up now. So it appears that we're almost at stage one. Because we've got this big furore of everything Black Lives Matter and everything being microwaved into something that people are now trying to rush through. The problem that we'll have is that unless we do it now in this climate, it's going to be very, very difficult to get this situation again. And in 20 years' time, we'll be asking the same questions.
Excellent. We'll dig deeper into some of the points that you made there, Chris. I know exactly what you're talking about, the period of time that you're talking about, because, as you said, that was you actually took me on my A license all those years ago. So we can dig a little bit deeper into that, some of that stuff that you've mentioned there. Anwar, can we come to you on the same question, please, in terms of, drawing from your own lived experience, why do you think that we're in this?
Yeah, I mean, I want to obviously echo a lot of what Chris has said, but I find it quite astonishing, really. I mean, I remember in 1997 when I signed for West Ham, my first Premier League contract, there was a huge kind of media storm around that, first Asian, first Premier League, etc., etc. And I thought, this is great. We can really have these conversations now. We can talk about role models. We can talk about visibility. We'll see change. And I was asked a question. I remember the very first sort of interview I ever did, like a real interview with The Guardian. They said to me, Anwar, why is there such a lack of Asian representation, BAME representation in football? 20 years later, I'm asked exactly the same question. For me, that is alarming. And I feel that it has been change. It has been slow. But we need to do more. And I think it's about giving everyone the confidence to see football as a viable career path, as something they can actually do. Because for a long time, people just got a little bit disconnected and disillusioned and felt that coaching and management is something that's not for them and not something that's part of their future.
Excellent. So can I come in on the back of what you two guys have said in terms of my lived experience? And I think it will probably be close to Chris's because we're both similar ages. We played against each other, I remember. And, Chris kind of went into the coach education before me, hence he took me on my A license. And I think, as Chris has said and as Anwar said, this for us isn't new where we are. What's frustrating for us older ones, I'm not including you in this, Anwar, that it's something that we've seen before, this situation. We not just once or twice, several times, and you become distrusting of certain situations because you've seen them time and time again, and things haven't really moved. And as Chris said, back in '99, when I was doing my A license, there was probably four managers in place at that time. Tell me if I'm wrong there, Chris. It was Keith Alexander, Leroy Zinio, and a couple of other, Brian Steen, and maybe one other. There was four back then.
Yeah.
Go forward, where we're now 25 years later, wherever it is, I'm not counting the years anymore. It's 4.
Yeah, we're back to 4, and that's
the thing that really sticks home to me. And I've gone through all that journey, and Chris has done, and there's several others that have gone through that journey. And there's people like Ricky Hill, Luther Blissett, so many others that you could name that have got stories to tell. But we don't just want to be telling stories; just want to see an end to this situation. So yeah, we can go on and on about our stories, and I don't really want to make it about me necessarily, but because the thing about it, it's our communities. We know what our communities think. We know what other coaches think, both black and white, and this is a real issue that we have to deal with at some stage. So that's why I am with this part of it. Butch.
Thanks, Paul. And I just on the back of that, I think a couple of things that Chris said in particular. Okay, a missed generation is the first thing that's coming out there. First of all, okay. Anwar mentioned how alarming it was, and Paul, you're talking about it being a cycle that just doesn't seem to have been broken, and it's a cycle of despair rather than hope. And I think that's really where, when we look at this situation, we ask ourselves, what is it that we can do to break this cycle? And I think that we've talked a little bit about a number of the initiatives over the past few seasons, either joint or standalone, take into account the current statistics as they are. The question is, Paul, Chris, Anwar, and I'll start with Anwar first this time. Are those initiatives effective enough? And if they are, great. What are the things that we can learn from them? But if they're not, why aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's always great when new initiatives come out. you try different things. There is different ways to solve a problem. You know, I'll encourage everyone to come up with different ways to do things. But to be honest, it's not had much change in terms of the statistics that you mentioned at the start of the program. And for me as well, one thing I always find interesting about initiatives and different ideas, it's about who knows what they are. Because, for example, if we want to encourage underrepresented communities to get involved in football, then we have to make sure that our messaging is going out to underrepresented communities. If we rely on our social media, our websites, and our internal networks, that message isn't going to go out to the people that we actually want to encourage to be involved. So I think there's lots of things that have been great and have been done, but I think we've got to target who we want this information to go out to. I mean, there's lots of initiatives I find out about that are great, and I find out about when it's too late to apply, or just through third hand and being in the industry. So, you know, for me, it's about if there's something we want to put together and there's something we want to look to do, and that is how can we engage with the underrepresented communities. We've got to look to how we connect with the underrepresented communities. And I'm not sure, if I'm honest, from my own experience speaking to community members and people within these underrepresented groups, I'm not quite sure they even know about some of the initiatives that are out there and available. And the thing is, from the outside looking in, football can be a big, dark, scary place. And if you're not an ex-player or you've not got a network within the game, where do you start? How do you start? And I think that's something that we need to look at. I think when we look at an issue like this, we have to go right back to basics. Let's start at the foundation, because if you don't, it's going to be a problem moving forward. And I think sometimes we have to think about how do we do that and start from the beginning, so that when we do achieve what we want to achieve, we're going in the right direction. We're starting from the bottom up. You know, we're not assuming, we're not predicting. You know, we're starting from the bottom up, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, Anwar, excellent. Chris, just add into that really more than anything else. One key thing about initiatives is how sustainable are they, Chris? And do you think that what we've had in the past have been sustainable enough? Because if they were, then they'd be embedded now, wouldn't they, really?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. I think the initiatives have been obviously done with the right ideas to move things forward. But sustainability is where we've fallen down. And also, where do we go after the initiatives? So a lot of the times, like Anwar was saying about people knowing where to go and who to target, I think added onto that, what you're looking at is, when we do an initiative, what is there a plan for the people in the initiative? So we've targeted, say, one person, we've targeted a coach, for argument's sake, to put him within an initiative. While he's doing or she's doing this initiative, the things that they're learning should be things that we are saying will help them to get a job after. So it's great to educate people and give them the education and the experiences. But if the initiatives are paid, which most of them are, brilliant, because you've got somebody else actually in employment, which is fantastic. But when that ends, each thing that they've learned or anything that they've learned within that should be something that should be taken into consideration for their next job. Therefore, I believe that what we should do while they're in the initiatives, we should be looking for jobs for them. Okay. We should be saying, right, for argument's sake, if someone's on a coaching placement or something like that, we know that the jobs come up all the time. As Anwar says, a lot of people don't know, but as our federations and stakeholders know that there are jobs about. As soon as those jobs become available, say towards the end of an initiative, someone's doing something for 12 months, around about 9 months, we should be looking to where could that person go for a job interview? And can we, I wouldn't say fast track them, but can we even if we know that it may be a job that they're not completely suited for, can we give them the opportunities to go and experience that interview, which is generally where most people fall down. So something like that, I'm not saying that's the complete answer, but what we want to do is, once we target people, we need to work on polishing that person to stay in the game and get them a job that is reflective of what they've done in the industry.
That's brilliant, Chris. And I want to build on that, Paul, with you, actually. Yeah. So we're conscious that there's a number of different programs that are around. But I think what I'm getting from Chris in particular is make them more employable, and increase their employability. We might not get them the employment, but how do we make them more employable? How do we increase their employability? And especially around Chris's point around how we can also support them, and Anwar's point around the poor networking as well. So do you think some of these programs are working, Paul? And if they are working or they're not working, your views on that?
Well, the numbers say to me that they're not working. That's how I look at it. You know, I'm looking at how many Black Asian coaches do we have, and it's not, to me, it's not working. There's been some small minor improvements, and they still, what's the old saying goes, if you keep doing the same old thing, you're going to get the same old answers. And unfortunately, I think that's where we're at the moment. I think we're going to need to, I want to say we, all of us, black, white, are going to need to really look at different ways of shaking this situation into place. Initiatives, you know, we mentioned earlier about how we've been in this place. It's been 25 years of initiatives. So, you know, it's frustrating. There's a lot of frustration out there from people, and we need to find a way that's going to make a difference. So, yeah, initiatives are good, but haven't worked, have they? Right.
So, right intentions, as Chris was saying, but I mean, I think there's a real question mark over what we've done so far. I think, in particular, it's clear that we need a pipeline of talent coming through. And if we have got a pipeline of talent coming through, I think what happens then is that critical mass of coaches that are coming through with the experience, hopefully with the qualifications, because that's really important as well. But probably in front of me right now is the most qualified person I know
So can I just touch, sorry, Butch, can I just touch on the pipeline?
Yes, of course, Paul.
Yeah, because we've worked on that. So again, Chris will remember when, again, we've got to contextualize this, and we always keep going back. I keep going back because history is important. I've realized that history is very, very important. I've only really realized in the last few months, let's say, but we have to go back to go forward. What's gone before. That's why I started off with naming people like Ricky Hill, and because these guys, you know, we have to use their knowledge and experience to help us out of this situation that we're in. But the thing around coaching, because we used to say that we were told that black players and black people weren't interested in coaching. I remember those days, and I used to think, oh, that's not true. That can't be true. And then I was told that, you know, they're not interested in getting their coaching badges, and I said, no, that can't be true. I'm one of them, and I'm not that. And I know I speak to the other guys, and they're not like that. So I don't know where that came from. So that sort of myth has to be dispelled. And hopefully we're not anymore. So we've had to really overcome a lot of myths. That's just one of them. So we've got a pipeline now. I was part of helping with that with the PFA at the time, and we managed to get a pipeline of black coaches. And we had a lot of resistance because, quite rightly, I was going to black players and they were saying, Paul, well, I'm not going to get involved in this business because I've seen what's happened to Luther. I've seen what's happened to Ricky. There's something not right here. So we had to overcome a big hurdle in trying to get people on, but we've managed to do it. We've done a lot of people have done a lot of good work in getting. So we've got a great pipeline of black coaches now and Asian coaches that are qualified, they're ready, and been ready for. So just to put a little bit of context on that bit of, you know, sort of pipelining and the history of this situation.
And I think that's important. I know a couple of things that I want to pick up on. First of all, I know Darren was meant to be joining us. Hopefully, will join us later. But he was recently quoted after a new BAME player to coach scheme. He said that this was a real critical time for Black, Asian and minority ethnic coaches. He said that we're at a critical stage. It'd be interesting to hear your views on how critical this stage is, and are we getting to a tipping point? Chris?
Well, carrying on really from what Paul said, it is, this is a critical stage, and the fact that I think Paul and Iffy were sort of at the forefront of qualifying lots of coaches from minority communities, which is why I get to the point where I get a little bit upset when people talk about visibility, because that suggests that their work is not being valued. The fact that they had the resistance and went out and really helped to increase the numbers within the community regarding the coaches. So I think it's a critical situation. I think, as I said before, the initiatives are always done with the best intentions at heart, but this is a massive opportunity. I think there's 5 places, 5 or 6 places of where we've got coaches that are with the spotlight on them, that we actually can get them to a point where we can look for jobs for them during their placement, and hopefully at the end of it we won't be looking back and saying, well, there were 5 coaches, where are they now? None of them are in the game. And it's important that we make sure that the placements are not done in a way that they're not employable. So for argument's sake, if they're doing things on the placement that will not be considered by people at clubs, there's no point in doing it. So and coaches also have to look at like the placement we did for you, Butch. Where when the coach goes into a club, you try and round that coach off. So just because we're talking about Black and Asian managers and minority coaches not getting the opportunity, we also got to realise that football's a big world, and it may be that I want to be an academy manager instead of a first team coach. I may want to be a sports scientist instead of a manager. So we've got to really make sure that we give people the opportunity to go into different fields, because if you actually look at it, if you want any job you want to do, if it's around the first team, there's only 92 of those jobs. There's only 92 of those jobs anyway. So it's important that we increase people like yourselves, Paul, Iffy, people like that, who are helping to make decisions, helping to bring the community into the wider community of football, so that people can see that there are more, not just visibility, but more quality, qualified coaches, administrators, whatever it may be. Because visibility for me is gone. Visibility was when we were doing this back in 1997, when I got my badge in 1994. That is when visibility was important, because there were none. There were no people. There were no minorities involved then. At the moment, I think it's a little bit of an insult to say that there are none, because there's 4 of us on this call now, and we know there's a lot more people that are qualified but not getting the opportunity.
Thanks, Chris. Critical stage, Anwar?
I think yes, but to be honest, I think if you're a coach in 2000, in 98, in 2001, 2002, it's a critical time for you always, because I know so many coaches are at a crossroads and they're saying to themselves, do I go and get a job? Do I continue with my badges? Do I hold out for an opportunity? Everyone's telling me football's not the right thing to do. I'm struggling. I'm not making money. So it's always been a critical time for a coach, and having the confidence to be able to have a career in the game. And I know a lot of people that are qualified, they've got great experience, but have really found an opportunity hard to come by. So I think it's a critical time for the industry, because you can't keep having these conversations. It's great that, like Chris said, the 4 of us are here talking about this issue, and we've all got our own experiences. We've been in the game for a long, long time, and that's great. But it's about making sure that there's not a generation that's missed, like we've discussed, as so many people may have. It's about providing an opportunity but actually giving people the confidence to go out and be the best you can be. Because yes, there may be a lack of opportunity, but as an individual, how can you separate yourself from the best? And that's regardless of where you're from. That's just about your USP. Be the best you can be. Be someone that if you get an interview, if you're lucky enough to get an interview, you sit in front of someone and they say, I want this person at my football club. And there are lots of opportunities in clubs in terms of management, coaching, sports science. So if it's an industry you want to get involved in, like I said, and as Chris mentioned, there are lots of spaces available at clubs, and it's a great experience. So it's about, I think it's always been critical for that coach, be where you are, what you want to do. Because how many of us, even on this call, have asked ourselves that same question? You know, do I stick with this? Do I go and get a job? Do I forget football? Do I forget the dream? Because coaching, like playing, has always been a dream of mine, and I've done everything I can to make sure I'm in the position I'm in today.
Brilliant, thanks. It's interesting, isn't it? So I think that we've got the qualification space kind of right. We've got enough people now who are qualified, and I think we're listening to Chris about what the initiatives have to be supported with wraparound support and development around how they become employable. A really interesting point from you, Paul, around dispelling myths. And so, although I wanted to start with Chris for this one, I'll start with you, Paul, because there's a perception in the game black players are seen as performers, not planners, entertainers, not executioners. What will it take to change that culture, Paul, where they are regarded as talented leaders within the game? Why is it that myth somehow still seems to be apparent? I'll go with Paul, and then I'll go to you, Chris, on that one, and then finally to you, Anwar. Paul, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, these are really tough questions to really try to answer. I can't. I really don't know if I can truly answer that. I think it's again historical situations that the more I learn about this, and find out about what's going on, it goes back to decades and centuries even, and it's a societal thing, obviously, and it's a social thing that we all grow up around, and so it's such a underlying thing that comes out in the end. It's really hard to say why that happens, but all I can say it has to be around how we're brought up, what we're taught, what we see. That gives us an impression of somebody. That's the only way I can really best answer that. And so, yeah, if we grow up in a time or in a place where certain things are normal, then it's just natural that you're going to behave a certain way. And I think on top of that, it makes it worse when people don't realise what their actions are doing, what they're saying sometimes, or even what they're not saying.
Yeah.
Can give away. So it's such a multi-layered thing. All I would say, Butch, is really that we're all part of this, black and white.
Yeah,
we're all part of this. And I think the thing I feel, there's some people that feel they're not part of this. There's some people there that feel, oh, I'm not, it's got nothing to do with me. It's, I've got no part to play in this. We've all got a part to play. We all play a part. So that's the best way I can really answer that, Bush. I know it's a long way around it, and it probably hasn't answered it. But
that makes sense. I want to go, Chris.
People need to think about what they do and what they say.
Absolutely. Chris, challenging these stereotypes. There is an element of education involved as well, but how did you challenge it? One of the most I would say the most qualified black sort of coach around, yet still one opportunity.
Well, I mean, challenging the stereotype from my point of view was what I did, which I knew I had to do, being a low profile player, I had to to be as qualified as possible, and also ensure that I put myself into situations where, one, I was networking as much as I could, and just honed my skills, and obviously got better at doing the job. Now, you can't say there's not been an element of fortune in my journey, but I've always challenged the stereotypes. To be fair, right from the beginning when I first started. Now, has that done well for me? Probably not, because in some respects, people want to keep you away from the arguments and decision making when you open your mouth and say things that are maybe a little bit true. One of the things that Paul said that I've always said is our biggest problem are not the far extremes. It's not the people that we know are racist, and it's not the people that we know are not. It's the people in the middle who are saying it's not really got anything to. It's all right. There's not really any racisms. The eye rollers that keep saying, "Oh well, not that again, not that old problem again." So a lot of those mainstream people, and it could be people who have got black friends, Asian friends, who do not see the racism because they themselves have an integrity to be admired. They don't realise the integrity of the other people is not the same as them. So, like Paul said, it's nothing. They're saying, well, it's not really. It's okay. Now, for me, that's the most dangerous people for us, because we need that silent majority to actually be aware that their actions of doing nothing and having low empathy for what we're going through is, and mine, I would say, in itself is a little bit of racism, because it's not taking into consideration what the people who are struggling to get jobs are going through, even though they are not outwardly overtly racist in what they do.
Thanks, Chris. I'm conscious we've got Darren. Darren's joined us now. Darren Moore, welcome, sir. Manager of Doncaster Rovers. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Nice one.
Darren, we are in the middle of the webinar, and just to give you a bit of a catch up, and it would be good to review this as well for everyone who's going to be listening to it a little bit later on. We talked, Darren, obviously about the lack of representation of black and Asian coaches within the game. We also read out some pretty alarming statistics on only 4 current managers within the EFL and EPL. And right now we've got 25% of those managers, of black managers, on the call, because 1 in 4. Because you are 1 in 4, Darren. We said it was alarming. We talked about it being a misgeneration. We also talked about maybe some of the initiatives that we've had in the past and whether they're working or not. And it'd be a really good time to get you in now, Darren, because we were also talking about dispelling myths, stereotypes, negatively being stereotyped, black players and black coaches and Asian coaches as well. And I mentioned also that quote that you said about the BAME scheme around it being a critical time for black and Asian coaches. It'd be really good for you to maybe expand on that a little bit, Darren, when you said that, and what your thoughts were behind that.
Well, what I thought was at the time, yeah, and going back to it, Butch, it is an alarming stat, really, that we've got few managers representing the game. I've always been one that would say that we feel that the professional games are good in terms of the way the football is presented worldwide, but how much more better the game could be with more inclusion of black and Asian and minority ethnic coaches right across the board. And I think that's the thing, what I'm trying to get out, that the game could be so much better with the diversity on the coaching and management side, because as you've seen, the stats and figures show on the playing level where the percentage are. So we need to try and obviously replicate that at senior management level, because we believe that the game's brought so much with the diversity of players within the game. So how much more would it bring with the diversity of management in the game at the very, very highest level? And there's a whole multitude of skill sets missing from that level. And now I'm saying I'm currently in the role but there's so much more people out there. There's guys online now with far more vast experience that I'm listening to them and taking points from them that I'm applying to my managerial position now and taking advice from them. So with them in the game at the level, how much more would the game be better? And I guarantee it would be better, but it's finding those opportunities given seems to be really, really alarming at the time. And there is an unfortunate unconscious bias to us that we deem that we're not good enough to manage or be in these senior positions, which I'm trying to dispel that, because even when we look on commentary, when they speak, they may say unknowing, they may say a black player, oh, he's powerful and quick, but yet to another player, oh, technically he's gifted and he's this. Just the message, and it's an unconscious. So straight to a black player, it's always powerful. That's all he's at. No. Of course, he's got the technicalities as well. He's got the vision to see a pass, and it's just those unconscious bias that goes day in, day out with commentary and the media, that it presents that to a player in it. And those kind of things you've got to dispel. You've almost got to change the narrative. We have to change the mindset. And yet when you speak about it, it's deemed that, oh no, we're not, but it is happening, and it's just happening, and they don't see it in the industry. And that's my detail when I look at what's going on in the game today in the footballing industry. Certainly, if we're talking about that now, those are the things that we have to change. And unless we change the narrative, we'll always be down the same sort of cul-de-sac with it in terms of where it's at. And that's where I'm just at the moment. And even in my managerial career, I got given an opportunity because I was in the industry and the club was rock bottom at the time. And I was given my chance. It was rock bottom at the time. With Darren Moore, probably got that chance and been fairly interviewed for it. And at the time, I begged to differ and asked the question. But I was in an industry, but it was rock bottom. The whole club was divided. It was on its knees. And being in the club for such a long time, I understood where the club was at the time. But I was given my chance on a managerial position. And I'd like to think the position that I'm in now is because what was done previously on that, but only because I was given a chance. But the chance came because of the circumstances. Now, what I'm trying to say is that how many more are out there that have those? I'm sure I've got those capabilities, Butch, of going on and showing their class and their worth and their experience at the level. And that's the bit where we're trying to get those opportunities given in terms of it. And there's been a multitude of jobs come up available over this last month, and how much candidates of a Black and Asian or minority ethnic background has been interviewed for those jobs or given the opportunity to stake a claim for those jobs. So that's my thing. My talking online is, surely we've got to come together as one to get into these positions. I'm not trying to protect that, yes, but it's a system that we've got to put in where there's equality right the way through. And
Brilliant.
that at the moment is lacking at the moment.
Darren, that is superb. I've taken away skill sets from that really challenging those unconscious biases, but also really important keywords, I think, changing the narrative, changing the mindset. I want to come on to Anwar, probably the highest placed Asian coach within the English game at the moment, Aldershot Town assistant manager. Asians, why is it we haven't had a pipeline of talent coming through from the Asian community, Anwar?
Well, I think just going on what we've just discussed, I mean, dispelling myths, I think it's laziness and it's a lack of understanding, because the amount of people over the years that have said to me, Asians, they don't play football, they like cricket and they want to be doctors. And I'd say always, have you ever met an Asian football player or worked with an Asian football player? And they say, no. I'd say, well, where are you getting that from then? And then they don't know how to answer that. Listen, it's about, for us as individuals, putting ourselves in a position where we can give a good representation of the community that we represent, and I think that's really important. It's given, and it's being able to have the opportunity to do that. There are so many people out there from a BAME background that I know would be unbelievable coaches, managers, because they've had an amazing amount of experience and they're really intelligent football players, actually want to give back. So one, it's about giving the opportunity. In terms of Asian coaches and managers specifically, there's a lot of work to be done, because I think in terms of players, You know, we've only had half a dozen players in the last 2 decades. And I think the majority of coaches and managers at the high end of football are usually ex-players or people that have had a good understanding of the game. Now, if we're talking about a lack of players, then obviously that's going to have a direct correlation in terms of coaching and management. However, you don't just have to be an ex-football player to be a manager or a coach. And there are lots of positions in clubs, in academies, at the FA, at the Premier League, at the EFL, where coaches who are developed, who improve, who do their badges can get an opportunity. So there's a little bit of work in that respect. But I am buoyed by the fact that we do now have more representation. And what's great for me, I know people like Chris and Darren are actually mentoring young Black and Asian coaches, giving people support. I never had that growing up, you know, and I felt like I could have helped, and I could have used a lot of support, which we now have for each other. And that's not just about Black and Asian coaches supporting Black and Asian coaches. That's coaches supporting coaches, and that's giving each other opportunity and support to become the best people that you can be. So yes, I'm positive about the future because, like we discussed, there are people in place, there are initiatives in place. But for me, in terms of the Asians in football debate around coaching and management, that's going to still be another slow burner, unfortunately. Yeah. But I'm trying to do the best I can.
No, fair play, and you know it's on the shoulders of giants of the 4 people I'm speaking to today is going to make that happen as well. Chris, Paul, both coach developers, also had obviously distinguished careers as well. Your thoughts on actually where do you see Asian coaches out there? Do you see potential out there? Why is it they're not breaking through? Chris, if I go to you first.
I think what Anwar said about the fact that there is a lack of the Asian players in the game anyway. And we know that that's something that needs to be addressed. So I think until you get people in prominent positions in the game who've been there and know the lay of the land, that's going to be a slow burner. But I think the likes of yourself, for argument's sake, who are bringing people into the game, making communities aware of what their opportunities are in the game, I think that's going to be where we can fast track that situation differently to what the Black coaches or players have gone through, because we somewhat know a little bit about the pitfalls. So if we can take the Asian coaches across that bridge to make sure that they get an equal chance as everybody else. Yeah. And I think there's still stereotypes in society about Asian people, the stereotypical thoughts that we need to make sure that they're squashed as early as we can. You know.
Thanks, Chris. Paul.
Yeah,
football virtually invisible.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with everything that's been said. Obviously, people like yourself and Anwar, you know, there's shining light for people of the Asian community looking up to you guys. You guys have got the pressure of that, and people looking towards you to deliver and deliver successfully. I suppose the other side to that is that, you know, the Asian professional is a little way behind the Black professional. So there's a time lag there in terms of, you know, getting into the game and playing the game professionally for a length of time. So getting in, you know, there was trouble for Black players getting in initially back in 70s, 60s, 70s. So there's a lag there that needs to be caught up for the Asian community. But it's the same issue that Black players and coaches will have. It's the same problem.
Darren, I'm going to come to you. Statistics suggest most managers get one chance, and the likelihood of returning is rare. You've bucked the trend with a second managerial position at Doncaster. So resilience is clearly a characteristic required to survive. What message do you have to aspirational coaches, especially those that are trying to break into the game, knowing that it could be one go and out?
No, dispel that myth. No, it's not about that. Don't put yourself under that huge pressure and fear of thinking, oh, it's one chance and then I'm out. No, it's not at all. It's how you hold yourself in the position when you get the opportunity. It's what you believe in, and I'm firmly a firm believer of that. There's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's what the individual believes. It's his ability to bring a whole group and a unit, a club, a staff, a playing structure that everybody will believe in terms of going forward. And it's down to the individual to make people within the clubs feel valued at what they're doing. And I just feel that that's where it is. And you know, in the jobs that I've been in, I've never tried to put myself under that pressure, because as long as you know as an individual that you're working to the maximum potential to improve that organization, then it allows you to go to bed and sleep at night and put your head on the pillow knowing that you've completed as best of work for that day. And I think that's the way how it is. And in my previous role, I felt that. And in this role now, I continue to do that and try and press on and just trying to gather as much information as I can as I go along, because it's no doubt when you're in the managerial role as well, Butch, you are kind of learning on the job. You're going through different experiences that managers had 5-10 years ago. The experiences today are huge. I'm dealing as a manager now with a pandemic situation. They've never been done. What's the right way and what's the wrong way of dealing with it? So you're just trying to, you're thinking on your feet each and every single day, and you're trying to be reactive or proactive to situations that arise on and off the field, really. So for me, it's please continue, have that thirst and hunger, have that belief. Do not give up. Keep pressing on, because the only way we're going to affect the change is by a multitude number of those coaches from the Black, Asian, and the minority ethnic background coaches of keep pressing and having that thirst and hunger, and we have to get there. We have to see more inclusion within the game.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, just unmuting it now. Anyone who has heard my webinars know that I always end up with once I'm muted, and I've done it that time. A question for you, Chris, which I'm going to bounce to Paul as well, on networking. How important is networking, and where your own experiences and how you've networked within the game, but also more importantly, maybe for coaches that are not professionals who are trying to get into the game as coaches, you know, what's the best way? I mean, which is the best way to widen the network? Chris and then Paul.
But first thing for me is if we're talking about people coming from different parts of the game, don't all think you're going to coach Man City to start with, right? Make sure that if you want to be a coach is equally as effective whatever level they're at. So make sure that you broaden your network that's going to actually suit where you are in the game at any given time. And once you start getting your foot in the door, hopefully you'll then climb the ladder. Most coaches think that they're gonna come straight in and they'll do the under-9s, and then within 3 years they'll be doing the first team. That's a rarity, and very, very happens for anybody of any persuasion. So that's what I would say for any young coach. Make sure that also when you're going to coach, we do placements and things like that. Where we say, oh, we're going to go and watch England, or we're going to go and watch this high profile team. Make sure you know why you're going. Are you going for a day out, or are you going to learn how to coach? So sometimes the best coaching isn't always done watching Barcelona and watching Man City and teams like that. Sometimes the best coaches can be at any level in any league. You can go and watch coaches actually hone their craft in at a level that you wouldn't believe people can coach at.
Paul, formal qualifications are trumped every time by informal networking. What do you think? Doesn't matter what qualification you've got. If you've got the networking within the game, you can somehow bypass that occasionally or all the time.
Well, you do need the qualifications now, don't you? So, where in the past you didn't need the qualifications so much. So I'll go back again because it's important that, you know, in the 90s, 80s, the qualifications weren't as talked about as they are now, because I don't believe they were mandatory. and Chris might be able to help me out in terms of dates, but it was
Yeah.
a time back then where players could just come out playing, and because they were famous or because they were well known, they would get offered a job, and that was actually what happened quite a lot of times. No matter how good you were, it's just that you had a big name or you were well liked at the club or whatever the reason was. You got the position. So qualifications, people talk about it like they've been around for years and years. It's really talking really mandatory. Probably about 15 years, maybe. I don't know, but it's not that long.
I agree.
Yeah. So it's a relatively new thing, the mandatory qualifications. And so up until that point, people were getting jobs on the back of friendships and networking, and it wasn't qualifications. So qualifications have come in, and I think obviously I would say they're for the best because that's where I get my work from. But it is actually, for me, it's the way to get better. Obviously, you've got to go and study the game and study teaching and learning and management, along with all the other skills that you pick up. But yeah, that's networking is difficult for some people. It's easier for others. If you're in that group of people, if that's part of your sort of friendship group anyway, then it's not networking, is it? You're just sitting with your friends. So it's an interesting one, the networking situation. But yeah, qualifications are really, really important. Yeah.
Anwar, one for you, semi-pro game that you're in at the moment. Do we have the answer there? How has the experience been for you? And how do we develop further opportunities for aspirational coaches within that area? Do you think it is a good, fertile ground for coaches coming through?
100%. As Chris said, if we want to be coaches and managers, you're not going to have, the pick of the litter. You might have to go into non-league or take a lower league team, and you're unfamiliar with the players, the terrain. But that's part of the challenge. I mean, like Darren, when I was at Barnet as captain of the club, Martin Allen left, and I ended up taking over as part of the management team because of the circumstances. And I had 7 games to save them, and we stayed up on the last game of the season. And lucky for me, I did my UEFA B with Paul, who taught me really, really well. When I was almost prepared for something like that because it's something I was always interested in. But having done that at Barnet in League Two, and then having retired through injury, I started to apply for some roles, and I wasn't even getting emails back. So for me, I had to go to the depths of non-league to learn my trade, to make mistakes, but to find out what it is to become a manager. And I've worked my way up from the lower leagues up into the National League, and it's been really, really difficult. And I would encourage everyone to do that, but I have to say it's not easy, because when you go into that level of the game, sometimes your coaching or your management skills has got nothing to do with success or failure. It's about the resources, it's about the club, it's about the chairman, it's about the owner. So there's all sorts of other things you've got to consider. But having said that, I always live by the saying that to get something you never had, you've got to do something you've never done. And for me, if that was going to be my pathway to the top, then that was the path I chose. And I'm glad I did it. And it's been tough. But I would encourage anyone who's not getting an opportunity to say, okay, maybe look elsewhere, a little bit lower, or even abroad, or even into the academy systems, to develop as a person, develop as a human being. Because as Darren and Chris will know, and Paul, you do make mistakes, and you've got to be prepared to make mistakes. You've got to be prepared to fail, because you get your best learning around failure. Yeah. And that prepares you for what lies ahead. So, yeah, I've done a lot of that, and I'd encourage everyone to embrace that opportunity, because there will be opportunity in non-league, because some clubs at the lower levels, they're crying out and they need people. Don't get me wrong, there might not be the money there that there's in a professional game, but there'll definitely be an opportunity.
That is superb. And that's a real message to a number of the aspirational coaches out there, that it's not always in the pro game and where you can learn your trade. One final question before my call to action to everyone. This is one around conscious and unconscious bias. And do we actually truly, from a recruitment perspective, do we live in a meritocracy or do we live in a meritocracy? And what I mean by that is, obviously, The first one is simple, is based on merit, or is the second one? When I talk about a meritocracy, do we look in the mirror and do we always recruit from what we look like? Darren, if I started with you first.
No, for me, I'm recruiting from what I believe the player can do the job that I need from the team, and that's what I look at the end of the day. And if I find the player with the right attributes that I believe is going to bring the right cohesion to the group of players, then I'm looking to recruit that player in. And it doesn't have to be particularly somebody that looks like myself. For me, it's a joint team because there's such a diversity of players. I'm just looking for the one that can do that role and do that specific job. So for me, I've got a whole rounded approach in terms of recruiting the player in. And thus far, in terms of who I've recruited, would show that in terms of the managerial position that I've held thus far going forward.
Thanks, Darren. Would that be the same with staff, as coaching staff as well?
Yeah, absolutely, with the coaching staff as well, without a doubt, through the whole structure. And sometimes as well, when you get to a club, the staff are already in place already, and you know, as long as he or she are performing at the level and they can work to the demands that you want to get the team to and the club to, then happy days. I'm all for it.
I think back, Chris Ramsey, to, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, Ricky Hill and you at Luton Town, two black coaches running the club. And, you know, being a local to the town, I remember a number of different comments about the fact that it was two black managers. Never seen it before. Is it the same now? Are we in a meritocracy still, Chris, or are we still employing people who look like us?
Well, me personally, I'm in the same boat as Darren, as regards myself. But I think society is definitely in a meritocracy. I 100%. I don't believe it's meritocracy. I don't believe that. I think society is opposite, and it's been proven really, because if things haven't changed within the last, I don't know, forever. I mean, one of the things I always say is why do we as minorities have to be better than the next person? Why can't we be just as poor as the poorest of the people that get the jobs? So why can't I be 6 out of 10? Because the 6 out of 10 people are getting jobs again, aren't they? So why can't I be 6 out of 10? That might be my level. Why do I have to be 7, 8 out of 10 to be the same as someone who's 6 out of 10? Why is that? So we have to get away. One of the things we have to get away from ourselves is saying, right, if I put a black person in a job, he better be good. Well, why does he have to be good? If the standard for most people is not good, why does he have to be better in order to get another chance? That in itself is bedding in the racism, because what it's doing is setting people up to fail. It means unless you reach the higher standards all the time, you can never get another chance. So I think until we get away from thinking that we have to be better, even though we know intrinsically the reality is that we have to be better. But society shouldn't be looking and saying that one part of society has to be better than the other part of society in order to get the same job. That's actually ridiculous. If you actually think about it, that is ridiculous. And that is where we are now. In order for you to get a job now that is the same as somebody else, you have to be better. That's not sustainable. Yeah. And we'll continue to fail while that is the thing, that is the way that we're thinking. While we can continue to think like that, I know intrinsically as individuals we know we have to. But as long as society keeps on saying that, and we keep thinking that about everybody else, the rest of our community, we can't succeed.
Chris, thank you. We've got literally.
Can I? Sorry, I wanted to say.
Yes, go for it.
I know you want to come to the last question, but I just have to just to say that I totally agree with what's been said by all of the guys, but particularly that last point by Chris. And I think, all the research says that people are attracted to people that look like themselves. So all the research says that. So, and unless you are aware of that and consciously aware almost every moment of the day that, you could be putting yourself in a situation where you're being biased without even realizing it. And this is the thing about this stuff. It's people we mentioned it before, people doing stuff and they don't realize it because it's in the psyche. So it's the awareness. The awareness thing is really important that people understand. There's so much research out there, Butch, as we all know, that we are attracted to people like ourselves, and we have to be really mindful of that. I'm not sure how many people are.
Nice. That's a great point, Paul. We've literally got 30 seconds each for a call to action. I want to pick up on Chris's point first. It feels like if it was a 100-meter race, Chris, it feels like Black and Asian coaches have to run 110. That was
exactly.
So. Here's where we are. I'll start with Anwar, then I'll go to Paul, then I'll go to Chris and Darren. If you finish us off, you've got 30 seconds. A call to action to leaders out there who are making the decisions. What would it be? What would that call to action be? Anwar, over to you first.
Listen, for me as a kid, innocently, I believed in a meritocracy, and I'm grateful for the game in terms of the playing side because it gave me a great opportunity to showcase what I am as a parent. It gave me a great opportunity to probably have the career that I had. In the real world, in the coaching and management, I think it's very much different. And what I would say to everyone is, if you have to go the extra 10 meters, as we discussed, be prepared to do so and do whatever it takes to go 110 meters, because you might have to, but you probably will. So all the little things, all the little edges, all the marginal gains, make sure they're ticked off and be the best you can be. And ultimately, that's all you can do.
Paul, call to action for those. Yeah, I'm going to go you, Paul. I'll go Chris. Sorry, I've caught you out there, Paul. Paul, call to action to those who are making those decisions. What would it be? What would be your key messages?
I think there's a few key messages. I think for me, it's having honest conversations with both yourself, first of all, as an individual. Am I? Because we're all in this together. So, what affects a black person is going to affect a white person, and it's, black people have been misdealt a bad hand for a long, long time, and there's a lot of frustration out there from the black community, and the leaders need to know that. They need to have the conversations. They need to be honest conversations. And we all have to look at ourselves and make a difference, and don't shy away from conversations. Don't shy away from asking the difficult questions. Don't say nothing. That would be my call to actions for leaders and everybody individually to look at themselves, because we're all culpable. We're all part of this. There's no one out of this. So that'd be my call to action.
Thanks, Paul. Chris?
My call to action is diversity on boards and within the decision makers. There's an acronym called AGED, which stands for aged, gender, ethnicity, and diversity/disabilities as well. That would be my call to action, because unless we have that on a board, where the boards that are diverse, they will be in the meritocracy forever.
Thanks, Chris. Final words, Darren?
Yeah, and certainly for me, I think for my call to action would be for all the owners in these positions at clubs. Probably what some of the guys have said is, I know out there within your heart and minds there is somebody that wants to take that opportunity and give somebody of color that chance. It's within their hearts, within their minds. My message to them, I'm encouraging them. Give them. Go with your heart. Don't go with follow what's going out there, and you don't want to be the first to book that trend. Go with it, and if you feel it in their heart that that individual of color is the best person for that job, then go for it. Just go for it. And so I'm encouraging the owners at the clubs, these people in high position that make the decisions, that listen to this, that is pulling on their heart. Be that person that sticks your head above that pulpit and gives that person that opportunity, and just go with it. And I'm encouraging the person in that position to go with it, and hopefully an opportunity or 2 or 3 will arise from it.
Darren, thank you so much. We are out of time. It was informative, it was insightful, it was inspirational, and I hope that those listen to it can take on board some of the messages. I want to start with Anwar first of all. Thank you so much, Chris Ramsey, Darren Moore, and Paul Davis. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Yes.
My pleasure.